Welcome to my grandpa's train. Today's video is going to be a little different than my usual repair videos on locomotives. Today I'm going to do a comparison of a specific type of locomotive, that is the ALCO F locomotives, the FAs and FBs here I have on display. Let's take a look at each of these individually and see who made them and what kind of quality they are. I'm going to start with these red Lionel ALCOs. These are the Texas Special 0566. This one is a powered unit and this one has been converted to a non-powered unit. Let's take a look underneath the hood and see what makes this one tick. The shell comes off quite easily. Just spread it apart a little bit and it slides right off. And you can see that we have a motor here with two drive shafts, and this is a hybrid rubber band powered, which means there are rubber bands for each truck, but then they're also worm geared to each axle. So it is a rather unusual drive mechanism that works much better than you would think it actually does. By the way this thing looks, you'd think it would jam up and not go at all, but no, actually it runs quite well. The motor is original. I haven't done anything to it. If you take these Lionel motors apart, they will lose their magnetism because of the way they were built at the factory. If I were to take this motor apart all the way, I would most likely install a neodymium magnet. But this one is working just fine without it, so I'm going to leave it as is. I also love the original Lionel style light bulb. I believe these are still available to buy new as a replacement if I need, but this one works good and it's nice and bright. The shell on this is also in excellent condition. Very little wear on this one, hardly any paint chipped off. The colors are still nice and bright, vivid red and clean white. Now this locomotive I converted to a dummy unit primarily so that I could use it as an AA set because all my others have an AB or an AA to match. Originally, I wanted to do a restoration on this one and make it work just like the one on the right, but this one was missing a drive shaft and it's in much worse shape. So what I'd consider doing is turning it into a non-powered unit, which it is right now, or putting a completely different drivetrain underneath. I had looked at doing a Hobbytown drivetrain or an Athearn underneath it. Neither of those are feasible at the moment, but I'm hoping to do something like that down in the future. Another reason why I couldn't use a Hobbytown drive, and I'm going to compare it to the Hobbytown locomotive right now, is that the Lionel is a full 1/4 inch shorter front to rear. So they actually modified it a little bit and made it much more toy-like in appearance, which I don't mind. I mean, that's what Lionel does, make toy trains. This one also sits on, I completely redid the trucks so that they sit on 2 bolts, and then the bolts drop into these pins because the original mounts broke in half. So a little bit of creativity and it works just fine. I'll get that put back in the track here and we'll take a look at the Hobbytown. Up next is the Hobbytown ALCO FA and FB, and there's not a whole lot to see on the B unit, so I'm just gonna leave that alone. But the Hobbytown is actually a hybrid. It's a Hobbytown drive with a Lindsay shell on top. So I'm not sure exactly what the differences are between the Lindsay shell and the Hobbytown shells, but both are cast metal, and this one might have a little bit more detail. I think this one was painted at one point and somebody stripped the paint off. This also has brass detail parts added, the number boards, the headlight surround, and then the steps are brass added, and Lindsay shell on this one. Oh, and these are also missing the grills for the radiator fans. This Hobbytown drive works pretty good mechanically, but electrically it's actually terrible. This is also a new version that appears to have a plastic gear tower instead of the older solid brass ones. So this one sounds a little bit more toy-like when it's driving down the tracks. You'll hear what I mean when we run it a little later. Also, electrically, this is one of the worst engines I've ever had. But this one can barely go because it's only a 4-wheel pickup and it gets stuck. It's extremely sensitive to dirty track. My track isn't exactly that dirty, but it does not like it one bit. And Hobbytowns are known for being able to pull plaster off the walls. Not this one. This one is rather anemic. I'm not sure if it's the drive tubing I need to replace, or it just doesn't have enough weight, but you load this down with a couple heavy cars behind it and it just does not go. So maybe it needs new drive tubing. We'll see. I'm going to service that one possibly later on, but not in this video. All right, here we have a Walthers ALCO F, A, and B, and these are the Walthers train line. So much more basic as far as details in the Walthers line goes. These were originally undecorated. I'm assuming somebody painted them green, or they came green from the factory and somebody started adding striping, because on the B unit there is no stripe on that side, but there is a stripe on this side. Same goes for the A unit. Stripe on this side and nothing here. Well, almost. Also missing the headlight details, and the horn, the number boards are not there, so there are a few detail parts in the box that can go to this locomotive. Alright, well that was a hassle to get the shell off this guy. So you have to pry up on these plastic tabs, and then the shell fits very snugly over the frame, so you have to slide it off pretty much straight. You can't wiggle it. So we have a very basic locomotive underneath. Just a generic can motor with one flywheel, and then gears to the front and back. Lots of weight in this, so I'm sure you could detail these up pretty nicely to operate, and this one runs very smoothly. So in fact, with that type of can motor, they actually fly around the tracks. These are very fast engines. Another way they cheaped out on these is that they used non-operating couplers on both the front and rear of the A and the front of the B. I'm sure that could be easily replaced with Katie's or whatever. But one advantage to non-operating couplers is if the speeds are not matched between these two, they won't come uncoupled. So you can have, both of these are powered, so you can have a double-headed powered train that won't come separated. So that is the Walthers train line. And I noticed in the instruction sheet that they were from 1995. Okay, I'm going to go put this one back together, and then we will take a look at the last two engines. Our last two locomotives in this demonstration are the LifeLike Proto 2000s. These, I believe, are before Walthers bought LifeLike Proto 2000. These were undecorated, and someone custom painted and weathered these for the Sioux line. So I thought that was pretty neat. There's a couple oddities with the paint job on here. One is that the radiator grills is painted up so heavily that you can't even see through the radiator, but you're supposed to be able to see what's underneath there, which is kind of interesting. These radiator fins are movable, but were painted over rather heavily, so they don't all move exactly the way they're supposed to, and some are even stuck together. Lots of nice details on these, but it's all plastic, and these are painted rather heavily. Scale size horns, lifting eyes for picking it up with a train. Nice weathering and details. The headlight lens sticks out a little bit. Couplers are prototypical looking. These pieces back here are operable. They'll actually move in a little bit, so when you couple these locomotives back to back, these actually press up tight because the couplers sit so close together. Details on the trucks and things. These handrails tend to loosen up. This one's snapped off, but it's still there, so I'll glue that back together. Well, the radiator fan cover just fell off, so I'm going to be cleaning these up a little bit so you can see through them. Underneath we have lens plastic for the windshield, and then we have a light pipe thing for the two headlights and the number boards to light them up. The mechanism is a little bit more complex than the other four locomotives. Interestingly, they copied a version of the Athearn drivetrain. Let's take this weight off and see what I mean. Does this not look like an Athearn motor to you? It sure does to me. And then these trucks and truck mounts, drive tubes, look an awful lot like the Athearn ones. I would go as far as to say as they may have licensed this motor design from Athearn, because that's exactly like an Athearn motor. So up front we have two cab figures. These are nicely painted. The cab windows are so dirty though you can't even see the figures. I might see if I can clean those up a little bit. But you can see there's an extra mechanism on the top of this one, and this is to drive a mechanical radiator fan that actually spins. So when the motor runs, it turns this fan up at the top. So I'm going to run one of these with the shell on and one of them with the shell off so we can see that in action. Alright, I'm going to put some trains together and then we'll see which of these engines can do the best job pulling it around. Let's see if this little Lionel ALCO can pull 13 cars, including the dummy unit. Well, it made it for a whole lap around. The non-powered A unit did not make it because I have a gauging problem with the wheels. So I took that out, and it didn't like it too much, but it did make it around with 12 cars behind. Now I'm going to put on the Hobbytown locomotive and let's see if that can pull this train. Alright, let's see if the Hobbytown can do it. This train isn't too heavy for it, but let's add a few more cars because this is supposed to be a much more powerful locomotive. I'm going to add the B unit and a couple more cars, and we'll see how far this will go before it stalls. Huh. Okay, I just added the B unit, nothing else, and the engine can't even pull it. It doesn't have enough traction. I think we have a derailment on that B unit. That's going to need a lot more tuning to get it to make a full lap. I'd say that's a fail. Alright, let's put on the Walthers train line. Alright, let's see if the Walthers train line can do the... Oh, starts out super fast. I'm barely giving it any throttle and it's cruising. Well, it certainly draws very little power, and it's quiet, smooth, can haul this train no problem, but it has very little low-speed control. I had the throttle almost to the 0 mark and it was going pretty fast. Let's add some more weight, see what this thing can do. I added my heaviest passenger coach just for the weight. This is a pre-war all-die-cast American Flyer coach. Let's see how it does. and it handles it like there's nothing behind it. I'm going to add probably the rest of my post-war freight set and see how this pulls it. Well, this engine really digs in and can pull this train like nothing. It does slip a little bit in the far corner because I think it's a little bit uphill over there. I'm going to add the powered B unit and see if this thing can really fly around the tracks. Alright, the B unit's in place and ready to go. The real question is, will my train stay together? I'm surprised it hasn't fallen apart so far. Some of these couplers are the cheaper ones that I think would be kind of weak. Let's see how it does. Alright, well, other than my train coming apart in places because it's very heavy, the Walthers train line pulls this train like a champ. So far, this puts it into the lead as far as pulling power. Next, I'm going to bring over the LifeLike proto locomotives. We'll see what they can do. Alright, I have the radiator cover pulled off on this one just to see the fan in action, and I have the full-size train right off the bat just to see what this thing can do. I have noticed, however, that I think these locomotives are going to need some servicing. There's a bit of a clunking noise coming from the drive axles, and I'm afraid that the split gear plague has affected these LifeLike locomotives as well. We'll see what this can do, though. Yeah, I think the damage has already been done before I acquired this locomotive. It's going to need new drive axles, at least the gears. It sounds like all of them, or at least some of them, are split. I do want to add the second A unit on just to see if this thing can pull it any smoother. So far it does okay, except it's a little on the heavy side for this single engine. They're not as heavy as the trainline engines, I don't think. I'm going to run the second unit with the shell off just so we can see how it works inside. It shouldn't affect performance because all the weight is part of the frame and the internal weight. It has nothing to do with the shell. Well, that's as far as these engines are going to get. I have one more bonus test just to throw in for fun because I know that it can outpull the Hobbytown locomotive. Let's see what we got here next. Now, I know this is not an ALCO set, but I just wanted to throw it in at the end for comparison to show that this is actually stronger than my Hobbytown locomotive. This is my Varney EMD locomotive, powered A, non-powered B. Let's see what this can do. Well, it did it. Again, it's a very heavy train for even this engine, but it did make it around. One of the metal cars, I think, is shorting out, and several of them keep uncoupling. Otherwise, it did a pretty good job and definitely showed up the Hobbytown locomotive. I think that Hobbytown really deserves to be tuned up, but I just don't have time for that right now. If you'd like to see more videos like this of my HO trains, or even better, my American Flyer trains, please let me know in the comments and by leaving me a thumbs up. So until next time, thanks for watching.